Good morning, Dorina students. This is Coach Jackson, day 3 of our book, Matilda. Let's continue where we left off. The father glanced up sharply. I wouldn't mind, he snapped. Supper is a family gathering and no one leaves the table till it's over. But we're not at the table, Matilda said. We never are. We're always eating off our knees and watching the telly. What's wrong with watching the telly, may I ask? The father said. His voice had suddenly become soft and dangerous. Matilda didn't trust herself to answer him, so she kept quiet. She could feel the anger boiling up inside her. She knew it was wrong to hate her parents like this, but she was finding it very hard not to do so. All the reading she had done had given her a view of life that they had never seen. If only they would read a little Dickens or Kipling, they would soon discover there was more to life than cheating people and watching television. Another thing she resented being told constantly that she was ignorant and stupid when she knew she wasn't. The anger inside her went on boiling and boiling, and as she lay in bed that night, she made a decision. She decided that every time her father or her mother was beastly to her, she would get her own back in some way or another. A small victory or two would help her to tolerate their idiocracies and would stop her from going crazy. You must remember that she was still hardly 5 years old, and it is not easy for somebody as small as that to score points against an all-powerful grown-up. Even so, she was determined to have a go. Her father, after what happened in front of the telly that evening, was first on her list. And here's the family eating dinner. Here's the father looking all angry and getting that dangerous tone where Matilda would not talk again. And there's Matilda eating her TV dinner on her lap, trying to get to her room to read her books. The hat and the super glue. The following morning, just before the father left for his beastly second-hand car garage, Matilda slipped into the cloakroom and got hold of the hat he wore each day to work. She had to stand on her toes and reach up as high as she could with a walking stick in order to hook the hat off the peg. And even then, she just made it. The hat itself was one of those flat-topped pork pie jobs with a jay's feather stuck in the hat band, and Mr. Wormwood was very proud of it. He thought it gave him a rakish, daring look, especially when he wore it at an angle with his loud checked jacket and green tie. Matilda, holding the hat in one hand and a thin tube of superglue in the other, proceeded to squeeze a line of glue very neatly all around the inside rim of the hat. Then she carefully hooked the hat back onto the peg with the walking stick. She timed this operation very carefully, applying the glue just as her father was getting up from the breakfast table. Mr. Wormwood didn't notice anything when he put the hat on, but when he arrived at the garage, he couldn't get it off. Super glue is very powerful stuff. So powerful that it will take your skin off if you have to pull too hard. Mr. Wormwood didn't want to be scalped, so he had to keep the hat on his head the whole day long. Even when putting sawdust in gear boxes and fiddling and here's a quick little picture here of Matilda. She has his cane, she's getting his hat, and super glues the inside so it sticks to his head. Let's find out what happens to her father. Miles Jakars, with his electric drill, in an effort to save face, he adopted a casual attitude, hoping that his staff would think that he actually meant to keep his hat on all day long just for the heck of it, like the gangsters do in films. When he got home that evening, he still couldn't get the hat off. "Don't be silly," his wife said. "Come here. I'll take it off for you." She gave the hat a sharp yank. Mr. Wormwood let out a yell that rattled the window panes. "Ow!" he screamed. "Don't do that! Let it go! You'll take half the skin off my forehead!" Matilda, nestled in her usual chair, was watching this performance over the rim of her book with some interest. "What's the matter, Daddy?" she said. "Has your head suddenly swollen or something?" The father glared at his daughter with deep suspicion, but said nothing. How could he? Miss Wormwood said to him, It must be superglue. It couldn't be anything else. That will teach you to go playing around with nasty stuff like that. I expect you were trying to stick another feather in your hat." "I haven't touched the flamin' stuff," Mr. Wormwood shouted. He turned and looked again at Matilda, who looked back at him with large, innocent eyes. Miss Wormwood said to him, "You should read the label on the tube before you start messing with dangerous products. Always follow the instructions on the label." "What in heaven's name are you talking about, you stupid witch?" Mr. Wormwood shouted, clutching the brim of his hat to stop anyone trying to pull it off again. Do you think I'm so stupid? I'd glue this thing to my head on purpose?" Matilda said, "There's a boy down the road who got some superglue on his finger without knowing it, and then he put his finger in his nose." Mr. Wormwood jumped. What happened to him?" he spluttered. "The finger got stuck inside his nose," Matilda said, "and he had to go around like that for a week. People kept saying to him, 'Stop picking your nose,' and he couldn't do anything about it. He looked an awful fool." "Serve him right," Miss Wormwood said. "He shouldn't have put his finger up there in the first place. It's a nasty habit. If all children had superglue put on their fingers, they'd soon stop doing it." Matilda said, "Grown-ups do it too, Mummy. I saw you doing it yesterday in the kitchen." "That's quite enough from you," Miss Wormwood said, turning pink. Mr. Wormwood had to keep his hat on all through supper in front of the television. He looked ridiculous, and he stayed very silent. When he went up to bed, he tried again to get the thing off, and so did his wife, but it wouldn't budge. "How am I going to take a shower?" he demanded. "You'll just have to do without it, won't you?" his wife told him. And later on, as she watched her skinny little husband skulking around the bedroom in his purple striped pajamas with a pork pie hat on his head, she thought, "How stupid he looks. Hardly the kind of man a wife dreams about," she told herself. Mr. Wormwood discovered that the worst thing about having a permanent hat on his head was having to sleep in it. It was impossible to lie comfortably on the pillow. "Now do stop fussing around," his wife said to him after he had been tossing and turning for about an hour. "I expect it'll be loose by the morning, and then it'll slip off easily." But it wasn't loose by the morning, and it wouldn't slip off. So Miss Wormwood took a pair of scissors and cut the thing off his head. Bit by bit, first the top, and then the brim. where the inner band had stuck to the hair all around the sides and back. She had to chop the hair off right to the skin, so that he finished up with a bald white ring around his head, like some sort of a monk. And in the front, where the band had stuck directly to the bare skin, there remained a whole lot of small patches of brown, leathery stuff that no amount of washing would get off. At breakfast, Matilda said to him, "You must try to get those bits off your forehead, Daddy. It looks as though you've got little brown insects crawling about all over you. People will think you've got lice." "Be quiet," the father snapped. "Just keep your nasty mouth shut, will you?" All in all, it was a most satisfactory exercise, but it was surely to come too much to hope that he had taught the father a permanent lesson. Tomorrow, we'll go to our next chapter called The Ghost.